Good take and catch there from Levas, and Miraz is with him. Gaston Miraz got two already. The no look back on the inside. It's still okay because the fireman's there looking to ignite the attack, and beautiful ball there to Shepherd. Upfield go the arrows. Ferguson digs this one away. He's got his big number 8 with him.
Advantage.
Campbell. They have advantage again to the men in white.
Penalty advantage.
Moonlight yet again wasn't held. The former child star trying to break free there was Giteau. Still the same way they work. Spencer Jones again. Yeah, Moonlight, there he is again. Did a lot of acting when he was a young kid, went to Hollywood and then joined the local rugby side. And as his acting career fell away, he just became better and better at this game. Oh, what a breakout! Sniping little stuff. It's Andrew David Copperfield Ferguson.
The Raptors thought they had Ferguson by the shoelaces. Toronto scrum half able to sneak through somehow. Eluded not 1, not 2, but 3.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, or good morning, good afternoon. It's a podcast that's not listened to live, so whatever time of day the greeting that applies to you, feel free to insert that there. My name is Derek Brissett. Welcome to episode 40 of the Rouge Rugby podcast. With me today is Stu Hardy. Stu, how are you doing today?
Doing very well, thanks, in this very chilly Toronto Sunday. I, along with many other Torontonians and Canadians across the country, have been taking part in the Terry Fox run today. So raising money for cancer research. So, you know, been productive, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to hear you taking part in one of the great Canadian traditions as well. So as you may have guessed by hearing my voice first, Dan is unable to make this recording session. He is feeling unwell. So hopefully it's not anything too serious and we will have Dan back shortly. But do not worry, because we have someone way better than Dan to talk about rugby anyways. Probably knows much more about the game. 10 caps for Canada, 20 for the Toronto Arrows, has 6 tries in those 20 caps, putting him 3rd all-time amongst try scorers for the franchise, as well as 4th all-time in total points. Mr. Andrew Ferguson. Andrew, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks a lot for having me, guys. It's great to see this thing is, starting to make some waves in the rugby community and it's picking up steam. And Stu, I'm glad to hear that you ran in the Terry Fox run there. It's a great Canadian cause, and it's a good way to spend a Sunday as well.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully we won't keep you too long, so we can get to the Patriots Seahawks game that you were discussing just a few moments ago there. Are you backing anyone in particular in that one tonight?
I like Russell Wilson. I like the Seahawks. I don't know, there's something about the team. I don't really have a bias. I'm a Green Bay Packers fan, but on the West Coast, I did like Seattle when I was living out there, and it's a pretty cool team, pretty cool place to be.
Yeah, and obviously Seattle also has Luke Wilson, so there's that little Toronto Arrows connection too, right? So you can't really cheer against him at this point.
Yeah, that guy was an absolute weapon. He is a beauty, great guy, and he was awesome to us when he showed us around. And yeah, so definitely soft spot for the Seahawks.
Yeah, so like, what was that experience like? Kind of getting to were you guys at CenturyLink Field, or was that like a separate practice facility that you were able to walk through and tour with them?
Yeah, it was the practice facility. He works out with Sean, our S&C coach. Is one of the best in the biz. So Sean had that connection. So he invited us in, and right away he was just, one of the guys. He's as you can probably tell, he's a guy's guy. And he was just an awesome dude. Showed us everything. We went out into, the film rooms, the gym, recovery rooms, everything. It was, top-notch tour.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess like the last couple of months here with COVID-19 and everything has been, it's been very bizarre times for everybody. So just kind of like, what have you been up to in the last, say, 6 months since the last Toronto Arrows game? What have you been up to? What has been occupying your time? Like, what have you been doing to kind of just stay busy while there was essentially no rugby to be played for a long time?
Yeah, it's a unique time, eh? There's not, I don't think, I've definitely never experienced anything like this. And so for the first, 2 months when you really didn't know what was happening, it was a bit of a scary time. When the kind of announcement came down that, our league was going to be at first postponed, and that we were in the middle of a bye week, and myself, Giuseppe, Sam Malcolm, we had rented a VW camper van. We were out in
nice.
Utah at the time, and we went to Zion National Park, and we drove around and stayed in the camper van for a week, and it was awesome. But we were just heading back to the Denver airport and getting ready to fly back, and that was when the Rudy Gobert touching all the mics and starting that whole thing was just coming out. The airport was dead, and we were just in Utah for the last week, so we were all looking at each other like, oh, like this is trouble. And so then got home, and first couple weeks were, what do? You go and you buy the last dumbbells you can at every store. Everywhere's sold out, and we have a Watt bike here and that. So between those two things, we were able, my fiance and I were able to work out, as much as we could and kind of, stay relatively sane. And then from there, when restrictions started to kind of get let up a bit, we were able to do some mini sessions, some one-on-one stuff with Pete Smith, our kicking coach. So a lot of kicking stuff, a lot of skill work in that. Just it gets a bit monotonous when you're working out by yourself and that. So it's nice to touch a ball again and at least be outside doing something, even if it was in small groups. So yeah, that was the first little bit until we started, doing team sessions the other week. So things are rolling ahead now, or at least were rolling ahead. And it's been a long 6 months for sure.
So like, what are some of the challenges that kind of came with like you said, not being able to necessarily train with your teammates? You mentioned some one-on-one kicking sessions with Pete Smith, but like how many, like, I guess, say rugby specific skills are you able to really work on when you're by yourself?
Yeah, well, I guess to answer the first part, that was, is what is difficult or what I found difficult. I'm somebody who I'm sure you're aware could put on weight really quick if I want to. So I found that to be the struggle at the beginning. I'd like be eating and not even be hungry, just bored, there's nothing to do. And I'd just be sitting there like eating, watching TV. So, trying to be a bit more disciplined and strict with that. And then as far as the rugby stuff goes, yeah, it was really difficult. I was doing things like, setting up pillows against a wall and passing balls into those and things like that, where you don't realize how quick you lose it. I'm not saying, as somebody who plays scrum half and your job is so heavily reliant upon your ability to pass, it's not something I'm not going to all of a sudden not know how to throw a spin pass in 6 months, but definitely, the crispness and feeling really comfortable doing it is something that 2 weeks, you go 2 weeks off and you can already feel it. So just trying to stay sharp on those little things and trying to get in at least a session or two a week of skill specific stuff. That was my, main focus. It's a lot more fun to do that stuff than always, bike until you puke sort of thing,
Yeah, absolutely. So like when would be the last time you think you've gone like, so I mean, obviously you've played for the Arrows, you've played Ontario Blues, Oakville Crusaders, McMaster Marauders, and Team Canada. So it's like you kind of like there's not a whole lot of time in the year where you're not playing rugby. So like, when was the last time you actually went? Like, what are we at now? 6 months without playing a game? Like, when was the last time that's occurred to you?
Playing a game. I went a pretty long stretch when I was living at Western Victoria with the centralized program where I didn't play in games. There was a little while where I was going on every Canada tour, but not getting in games, particularly early in my international stuff, 2016, mainly 2016 to 17. I wasn't getting a ton of high level games. We'd have a lot of training in that, but no games. And then obviously last year when I was at World Cup camp and that, and then when I got released from that, it was like, I know I'm being a Debbie Downer here, so Ferg's bringing down the podcast already, but I was pretty discouraged obviously by that, and I just wanted nothing to do with it for a little bit, and I thought I needed that, to get away from it. So I went, a month and a half without even, touching a ball or anything, and that was pretty much the last time that I'd done anything like that. And let me tell you, it took some time getting back after that, month and a half away alone. I was like coming back and I just wasn't where I thought I was going to be. So I will not be making that same mistake again. I will at least, try to stay on top of it once a week or so.
Okay, so we've talked about like you said, your experience with Canada and experience with Toronto. But I'd like to go right back to the start and ask, what was it that got you started in rugby to begin with?
Yeah, for most kids, it's in Canada, at least, when I was coming through, their first experience wasn't until high school. I was really lucky. I had, a couple best friends when I was coming through elementary school and then into high school. And one of them, Richard Jutronich, his dad was the head coach of Oakville Crusaders at the time, Mark Jutronich. And so I was always hanging out at their house, always playing around and always going around to the club. And I was playing AAA hockey all my life. So when I told my parents, I want to try rugby and that, rightfully so, they look at me like, we've been investing this money in you playing hockey for, 10 years at this level. So they were a little bit hesitant and it took them a bit to come around. But then when they did come around, it was, they realized that the merits in the sport and that. So I started when I was in grade 8 at a U14 level and then went right through high school and started there and then made my first Ontario team at under 15. And to be honest, I made that team because I could play. I started playing before high school, so I could pass a ball. And, a lot of these kids who are learning how to couldn't yet. And that was why I got put at scrum half. So, that ended up being kind of my pathway to playing scrum half as opposed to, being stuck anywhere else. For a fat little kid, throwing them at prop would have been probably the smart thing to do for me, or hooker. But they let me play scrum half because I could pass the ball. And, I haven't looked back.
So, and kind of in saying that, so you were saying that you were able to make like the U15 Ontario team based on the fact that you essentially started playing rugby before everybody else in your age group. So like, is there, in your opinion, do you think there's anything that, say, either Rugby Ontario, the Toronto Arrows, or even Rugby Canada as a whole can do to like start introducing the game to kids at a younger age? So maybe it's just, if you started playing rugby when you're in grade 7 or 8 as opposed to 9, it's not necessarily a huge advantage. We just have this pipeline of kids that have been playing rugby, since they were younger.
Yeah, I think, so kind of to preface that question, the last week we were in a session at Oakville Crusaders after we trained on last Wednesday. Lucas Rumble, Marcello, Will Kelly, and myself ran an under 14 session, and there was 47 kids at this under 14 session. When I started at U14, we definitely didn't have 47 kids out there. So I don't know necessarily. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I have all the right answers on how to grow it, but it seems like whatever they are doing, there are more kids, joining and playing and, having that outlet. And now, like I told those kids, like, when I started at under 14, the possibility of playing professional rugby in Canada wasn't a thing, so having that to aspire to and look forward to and try to get to that level, I think that's something that could keep kids going. Like I mentioned, I played hockey growing up. I wanted to go to the NHL. I wanted to, go to the OHL and the NHL, and that having that pathway for kids, I think is going to be a huge, huge, huge thing and a huge pull to keep elite level athletes in the sport. Because you're looking at the US right now as just an example, and they're becoming more and more of a powerhouse. Obviously the population is so big there, but there's so many good athletes who haven't had that opportunity to go professional in rugby in North America. And now that it's there, the sky's the limit for them. So if we can keep going with that as well and keep growing our player base, then those elite athletes hopefully will stay in our sport and grow it that way.
Yeah, I think like you kind of touched on, it's like, I think if you want to play hockey in Canada, you have a very clear, like, this is the path, this is the road that you follow. And like, no matter what part of Canada you live in, it is a very clear path. Obviously, like the CHL between their 3 leagues has teams all across the country. And if you aren't even quite good enough for that right away, you can always play like junior A, B, C, like go the whole, like, it's just a massive pipeline. So, I mean, I think I completely agree with you in saying that it's like, I think you have to develop things like, I guess, even like the Arrows Academy and Pride, just to be like, this is like, if you want to play for the Toronto Arrows, you play like, you can play for your club, your provincial side. And then if you're good enough from that, you'll make the academy. If you're good enough from that, you can go play with the Arrows and play an MLR, or maybe even use a similar path, but like maybe open up doors for other teams and stuff as well.
Yeah, 100%. Like those elite athletes, like they just want to, strive for something and have a shot. And now knowing that there is a viable option where they can make some money is huge. And, at that age, it's not even about the money. It's about, trying to be the best and playing professional and that, and having that opportunity is that's what drove me. And I know there's a ton of other kids who have that same aspiration. So having a North American option is, changes the game.
Yeah, absolutely. So in saying that, it's like, what was your moment for yourself that you realized you could play at this high level, even if, say, the literal level of Major League Rugby didn't quite exist until a couple of years ago? But like, when did you realize it's like, I'm good enough to play for Team Canada, or even I'm good enough to play this game professionally?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it's one of those things where if you're always, you always compare yourself to your peer group and that. And obviously, like I was saying, I had started a year before most kids in high school. And so I had that little bit of a skills advantage there and a bit of maybe a tactical advantage. And I started watching a lot of rugby in that. So I had that little bit of an experience, we'll call it, an advantage over a lot of the kids I was playing with. And so I was successful at younger ages just because of that. And so I always thought, maybe something could happen here. When I made the Ontario team and I was playing and we started winning games and I was starting to think, okay, maybe this is a possibility. Maybe we can do this. And then probably not until I got into the Ontario Blues setup at the time. I think I played it, I was 17 or 18 maybe, and played in a trial match. And I was like, I was like scared, like so scared before going into this game. And I wouldn't say I was, a standout player by any means, but I was able to hold my own. And that was kind of that, okay, maybe I can play with these guys sort of feeling like you're mentioning.
Yeah. Now, you've mentioned that you were watching rugby games the year before everyone else started learning it in high school. While you were watching, was there any player that you tried to model your game after? Because I think probably by the time you were watching was the start of the professional era. And so there was the time of these players that are now going through their own academies and their own professional setups in Europe or the Southern Hemisphere. So yeah, is there anyone that you watched and you were like, I want to be like that guy?
Yeah, definitely. I think Matt Giteau, Australian 10, 12, 9, throw him anywhere. I just loved watching Matt Giteau play. I don't know. I can't even tell you what it is about him that I love, but something about watching him play, it was just like he went for it every time. There's never a question of his commitment. He wasn't the biggest guy on the field, and that he directed really well. He goal kicked well. He distributed, like his skills were good, everything. And for an undersized guy, he just really impressed me. And he was somebody, although he wasn't a scrum half, I loved watching him play. As far as scrum halves go, coming through, I just loved watching, everything. I liked watching Mike Phillips in Wales. I like that because he was kind of that opposite. He was an oversized scrum half. He was huge, and he was kind of that outlier in that time of the game, and just how effective he was. A threat to run the ball all the time, but also obviously the distribution skills and the game knowledge and all of his actual skill set impressed me a lot. And it was just, you watch guys like that and you go, well, if somebody who doesn't fit the prototypical mold of an international halfback or all these other things, and he's successful, and not just successful, but one of the best in the world, those are the kind of guys that, I look at and say, well, if they can do it, why can't I, sort of thing. So
in mentioning Matt Giteau first there, what do you think of like some of the rumors that have been floating around that he's potentially linked to the LA Giltinis and might be coming over to North America? Like, would you like relish the opportunity to play against them?
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. Yeah, it's one of those, you tackle him like, I'm sorry, Mr. Giteau. Here, get up, like, I don't know how that's good. I mean, I would absolutely love that opportunity. And you hear those rumors like him and, Adam Ashley Cooper going possibly to Austin and Drew Mitchell going to possibly New York and that. Like, those are the ones where you're like kind of fanboying it while you're thinking about playing against them. But I would love that opportunity, and I think it's only going to help our game having those people come over here to play. And yeah, I think it's going to be a really cool experience.
Absolutely. And just to kind of round out the like your rugby watching habits here, I know we've talked in the past. I know you've mentioned like you love watching like all forms of rugby, all forms of sports, as we're finding out here with the a little bit of hockey, a little bit of football and stuff as well. But like, when you watch rugby, is there any team in particular that you're like, when you know they're playing, you kind of make the time on the weekend to make sure that you watch, whether it's for just like entertainment purposes or like you really like what they do tactically? Is there any team that is kind of like a go-to must-watch for yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to think of in teams. It's easy, to say when international rugby's on, you always want to watch, pretty much all of them. But, everybody wants to watch the All Blacks play and all that. I like watching the Super Rugby stuff a lot because of how loose it is. You really get to see some, some crazy, crazy things being like changing the game. Like, I don't know if you guys watched this weekend, that Super Rugby game, the Australia game, and that, backdoor dummy.
Oh,
the winger.
Yeah, he pulled it back, and then the guy dropped it.
Yeah.
It's like,
I know. You're going to see that all over the ML, or guys trying to chuck this fake.
How frustrated would you have been if you did that and say like Ben Lesage was coming up and he dropped that?
I wouldn't say anything to Benny. He's got that look where he just looks into your soul, and I would think twice about saying that. But yeah, I know what you mean. Dummying that and trying to put someone away, and then they just knock it on. I'd be, you cut that from the highlight tape right after you dummy it and then you just cut it. That's the way I would look at that. So
yeah, there we go. The specific editing. Yeah, I even think even the North-South game that the All Blacks kind of played there, like the way that game ended with a cross-field kick for a try. That's some of the stuff that they do down there. It's incredible. Yeah,
that Southern Hemisphere stuff I love. I do like watching Exeter play. I like watching Exeter play because, they can attack from anywhere. Their second wave, everything, everybody's so skilled. They just kind of changed the game in the Northern Hemisphere, which was always known as, mauls and scrums and that forward dominated game. And Exeter kind of turned that on its head, I think. And they're a really fun team to watch. So I do like watching them. And then, so as far as Northern Hemisphere, I do really like watching them, but pretty much any of the Super Rugby and watching the New Zealand teams play is something that I'll always, if it's on, I'll always record the games and rewatch them because I enjoy watching the talent that comes out of there.
Yeah, and so we'll shift gears now to the Toronto Arrows. So you guys have been back at training for what I believe is about 3 weeks now or so. What has the return to training been like for you guys? Obviously, what is, I guess, just the general, how excited were you to just be hey, cool, we can train again. We get the action, like you said, I don't have to throw a ball off a pillow taped to the wall or something anymore. Yeah,
that's that first day, you're almost I don't even want to start training. I just want to sit here and talk with the guys for 20 minutes, it's nice to see everybody again. Obviously it was difficult. If I'm honest, it was difficult just because it was on a volunteer basis. So you weren't always able to get everyone who had work commitments and that. And, I try to work my schedule around and move things, but if you couldn't, so sometimes we'd only have 12 guys out at training. And so position specific stuff, trying to run through some pattern in that was at times a little bit challenging. But at the same time, you're never going to complain because for the last 6 months, you haven't been able to do anything. So it's nice to at least get out there and be able to throw the ball around and run, get those meters up and that. And our S&C coach was, super mindful and also monitoring everything. So for the first couple of days, everybody's so sore. And particularly in our contact sessions, it's you haven't done that in 6 months, everything hurts right after. So it was a bit of an adjustment period, but no one is ever going to complain. They're outside playing rugby or in the dome playing rugby, and that's what we all live for, right? So
yeah, exactly. And you that was going to be actually a little bit of a follow-up question that I had. It's so you guys are able to do full contact drills and completely train and stuff like that then?
Yeah, we did the last couple of weeks when we were preparing for potential matches. We did get into some live stuff, relatively controlled. It wasn't, full on breakdown, have a go, but it was a lot of one-on-one and two-man tackle stuff and a little bit of breakdown stuff, but controlled. So yeah, we were going full contact, and everybody's walking around the next day, like Frankenstein. They can't move their neck or anything, can't turn their head. But no, it was nice to be back in. It's nice, as weird as that is, to feel that the next day is kind of a good feeling. It's nice to be back and feel like you're doing work.
Now, you have an incredible record of playing for the Arrows. So with the exception of one game in franchise history, you have played for every Arrows game. So over 2 years, or more likely 1 year and 5 games worth of MLR competition, what has the level of competition been in MLR been like? And have you noticed a difference between the seasons?
Yeah, definitely. So to answer the first part, the MLR competition, I used to always say like the university rugby was just all compared to, the men's club was all just really athletic dudes who they'd run everywhere and they'd hit hard, but it, maybe wasn't as skilled. At the beginning, I thought MLR was, more or less similar where, the bodies are all big bodies. Guys are, professional in terms of the way that they take care of that stuff. But, as you could see by the score lines, the defense wasn't always there and that sort of thing. But gradually this last year, I know, like you mentioned, we got 5 games in. The level of play has gone, tenfold increased. There's not as many defensive system breakdowns. The opportunities aren't as obvious to kind of capitalize on in that. And so I do think that not just the size of the players is there anymore. The skill and the actual game awareness has gotten significantly better. And, the teams that at the beginning, there's 3 or 4 teams which were a little bit further behind the rest of the pack. I think that gap really closed. You saw teams like Houston give us that run where, debatably it could have gone either way, a held up ball in the end zone and that. So there wasn't as big of a gap between those top and bottom teams, and just the rugby in general. The whole level was significantly better. I think if you look at a team like Seattle, who they pretty much had dominated the seasons for their previous 2, where they weren't losing very many games. And then they come out in this season and they weren't able, I know they had some injury trouble in that, but they weren't able to grab a stranglehold on really getting their rhythm going at all. And I don't just attribute that to injuries and that. I think the level of play from every team has gotten better. Obviously they were the team to beat, but from every team that they played, every team was much, much better. And I think that's just come with the experience and as well as the recruiting. There's more quality players coming into the league, and the homegrown talent is just getting better because of it.
Yeah, and speaking of bringing in some of the new recruits into the league, obviously the Toronto Arrows have had quite the busy offseason, bringing in, some of the names that have kind of been highlights to come in, include like Juan Cruz Gonzalez, Manuel Montero, Adrian Waddin, Siaki Vikilani, is there any Gaston Cortez? I knew I was kind of forgetting someone in my head as I was saying that. So I was like, yeah, I went back and got it there. Is there anyone that is coming into the team that you're like really excited to start playing with, or even just to meet in general?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to play with all of them. First of all, obviously, guys, pour one out for the boys who left, the Dan Moores and the Sammy Malcolms and all those boys who unfortunately have left us for other things. But at the same time, I am super excited for everybody to come in. I've played against Gonzalez before, actually, every time we played against Argentina 15 and that. And he's always stood out as, a player like when I was mentioning Matt Giteau earlier, a little bit undersized, who just punches above his weight. And he's a guy like that. And obviously, watching Montero and that, you're kind of like, wait, this guy's coming to our team? Like, teams are in trouble, I wouldn't want to stand in front of them. So I'm lucky he's on our side. So yeah, no, all of them, guys like Taylor Adams coming in last year, you don't know a ton about because you're not watching the club systems in Australia and that. And you come in and you're like, the footwork, I haven't seen anybody do this before. I'm just like, I can't get dummied or stepped by this guy. And I go so hard and all of a sudden he's behind me, and you look and you're like, where the hell did that come from? There's so much talent out there, and these guys coming in are so talented, and I'm excited to play with all of them. But in particular, obviously, Montero's probably that big name coming over that you're like real excited to play with and establish a connection with.
Yeah, I think a lot of Arrows fans were, saddened by the retirement of Dan Moore, and then some of that was kind of alleviated by finding out that Manuel Montero was the guy coming over. No disrespect to Dan Moore or anything, but as you said, Montero is a great player. But I think we've kind of talked a little bit about this on this podcast. Obviously Moore was like, he's the captain, right? So like he's, you know, you can replace like maybe like say get somebody else to play the wing, but like how do you replace that like leadership component within the dressing room? I asked the same question to Cole Keith last week, but I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, Dan's a guy who, like you mentioned, obviously winger, captain. You could throw 15 different hats on, you know, co-manager, you know, anything you want to throw on that guy. It wasn't just the on-field stuff for him. He made such an impact with the leadership, not just rugby related, but making sure that all our ducks were in a row for things off the field, the sponsorship, the appointments, making sure guys were getting out to clubs to really, you know, spread the arrows, brand and that sort of thing. And I think he embodied that. So I don't necessarily think it is possible to replace a guy like that, but I think there are players within the team who we all just need to pull up our socks, and it's going to have to be a collective effort to replace a guy like that. Obviously his on-field stuff, you know, speaks for itself, and players at any level and any position are unfortunately replaceable. That's just what professional sport is. But the impression and the imprint, I guess, that he's left on the Arrows franchise as a whole through his leadership and you know, just his ability to, you know, get us all organized and pull in the same way, that is what is going to be difficult to replace. And it's definitely going to have to be a collective effort from everyone.
Yeah. I used to work at the Hockey Hall of Fame, which I know you being a Habs fan, lots of Habs presence in there. And it was kind of funny. We had like one event where there was a couple guys like Ken Dryden, Larry Robinson, Guy Lafleur from like the 70s, like the dominant 70s team. And inevitably when they're at these things, someone always asks them what made them so good. And the one thing that they always had the same answer was like, and it was always just, we had 23 captains like on our team, right? So is that something that, like you're saying, it's got to be collective? Is that kind of like the attitude that you're sort of looking through it? It's like one guy might have the title, but it's like, it's got to be everybody.
Yeah, definitely. I think we can all, you know, take a role in doing better, or to kind of, I don't know if Dan just doesn't sleep or what his thing is. There's not enough hours in a day to do all the things that guy accomplishes. So just in sheer terms of taking on responsibilities and making sure that, you know, the club runs the way, you know, because our management does a great job, and Bill, the owner, you know, gives us every single resource to succeed. So just making sure that we take advantage of all of those things, and making sure that, you know, guys are, you know, literally taking advantage of everything that's been given to us and capitalizing on that. I think that was something that Dan did amazingly well. So that's something that I think we can all make sure, you know, that we all stay on top of. And the leaders on the team obviously are driving that from the front, but everybody else takes that accountability. And that's what I think makes that Arrows kind of brand and team so special, because it's unlike anything, you know, as cliche as that is, a lot of the other teams that have been a part of, is just the ownership that everybody takes in that Arrows brand, and their responsibility to grow the brand and to represent well. And that means on the field, definitely, but also off with doing everything else in the community.
So one of the other players that has left the Arrows for next season is the only non-Canadian captain for the Arrows, which is Sam Malcolm. Sam Malcolm's also better known as the man to go for the main kicking duties. With Sam now leaving, do you think there'll be a brewing goal kicking competition? And if so, will you be a part of it?
Yeah, I think so. For the last couple of years, Pete Smith, he does this. So every Tuesday he would do, there's a kicking competition at the end of training, and it doesn't, you know, mean nothing, but it kind of sets you up for going to the Thursday competition, which is usually the competition for the game. Obviously so in the first year, Sammy was, you know, head and shoulders. There's a day. So we're in a dome. Just to set a bit of a scene for the pure listeners here, there's panels on the dome, and they're connected. There's one, you know, connection piece that is a big metal piece that runs in the middle that connects them. And so in our kicking competition, when you're indoor, it's obviously difficult. We don't have goalposts, so we use that one line. And if you're within one panel of either side, say, it's worth 3 points. If you're within two panels on the outside, it's worth 1. If you're outside of that, it doesn't count. If you hit that panel, it's worth 5. There was a session where Sam Malcolm went 5 5-pointers straight. Hit, I'm not exaggerating, it's like a 3-inch metal line, and he hit it 5 straight times. So, that was relatively earlier in the season, and that's when you just throw your tea in the garbage and say, Sammy, take this thing and run. Like there's no chance. But with him being gone, obviously it leaves a big void. And there's a bunch of really respectable kickers in the team. Obviously, Willie Kelly, you got Taylor, Giuseppe can bomb a ball. Spencer Jones is that dark horse. He can pump a ball 55 meters. That guy is an absolute athletic specimen. And he can pump a ball, and I'll stand up and kick some. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it's going to end up going. And obviously I look forward to that. But yeah, Sammy's a guy who is tough to replace, but there are, might be a kicking by committee thing this year. I'm not exactly sure. There will be some kicking competitions though.
Does going 5 for 5 off the bar in the middle, does that at least get you like a bye week, for the next competition? Like you get the next game anyways, or is there some bonus prize for doing that, or is it just? I think
Pete probably thought, rights. Yeah, ultimate bragging. I don't even know if Pete thought it was possible. I think we were talking about it the other day because Willie and I were doing some kicking at training the other day, and Pete's like, "Do you remember when Sammy went 5 for 5 on this?" It's one of those folklore legends with the kicking crew there. No, it's an impossible thing, but somehow Sammy did it, and that guy was as reliable as any, off the tee that I've ever seen. So yeah, it's big shoes to fill.
All right, so I'm going to give you a little statement about your team here, and I just want you to go with if you agree with it, if you disagree with it, and then maybe a little explanation of why you agree or disagree with the statement.
Cool.
All right, so the Toronto Arrows are the deepest team in Major League Rugby.
I would agree with that, and I would agree with that partly because at the moment we are the only Canadian team. So we can kind of cast that net a little bit wider. Anyone who's in Canada who wants to play professionally and obviously stay within Canada, there are a bunch of boys who are playing on American teams, but if they want to stay in Canada, we kind of have that bigger net to cast and grab them in. So our local talent and Canadian development is definitely an asset for us. And I think that's what helps us with our depth. And so it's kind of, that cliche of next man up. Well, that we do have a lot of next men coming through and ready to take the reins. So I would agree with that statement.
Yeah. And for yourself, obviously, in the 2 previous years, you had an unreal scrum half group with yourself, Jamie McKenzie, Riley DiNardo. Last year, Dylan Young was there. This year, you're going to have Jason Higgins coming over from Cork Con in Ireland. So in having one of the deepest teams in Major League Rugby, and you're at a position that is also pretty deep on the Toronto Arrows as well, you've probably got 3 scrum halves that could maybe start on the majority of the other MLR teams. So what is that internal competition like? I mean, I'm assuming a little bit of the friendly competition, you want to see the team do well and all that's mixed in there. But what is that kind of battle for the 9 jersey like? What's it like being involved in that? And how do you guys kind of push each other to get better all the time?
Yeah, as you mentioned that, we have Dylan, we have Riley, we have Jamie, myself, and I think, you could substitute any one of us in and the team would function, just as well. So it is kind of death by a million choices. There are options for guys. And the other kind of unique thing about scrum half, obviously, is all of us, I think, have a bit of a different skill set. Riley is so good. It's so quick. His feet are quick. He's in and out of breakdowns. He's really tough and tenacious. He doesn't miss tackles. He's aggressive, everything like that. Dylan is also super athletic. He's real fast. When he makes his breaks, he's going to make it pay, things like that. And, Jamie's steady service, everything. Strong kicking game. Obviously his skill set is, second to none. Everybody kind of brings their, specialties to the table. And, Graham Moffat, when he was coaching with Canada at the time, once told me, you're always going to be, the second best Aaron Smith. You're never going to be, if you try to play like Aaron Smith, you're going to be the second best Aaron Smith, so, and that was kind of my wake up to, if you try to play like other people, you're never going to be the best of what they are, because that's what they are. That's what makes them special. So just doing what you do and trying to do that well is what I try to think of and try to preach. And obviously nobody wants to sit on the bench. Nobody wants to, sit in the crowd and that thing. But like you mentioned you want to see the team succeed. At the end of the day, if you don't get selected, you have kind of, two choices. You either sit there and pout about it and, it makes the team worse off, and it's obvious to the guys in training. Nobody wants to go talk to the guy who's sitting there so pissed off because he's not in the game. And that instead, you take that attitude of, this is the role I'm going to play, and when I get in, I'm going to do well. And those guys, the other guys on the team really appreciate that. And I think that's one thing our whole team, not just the halfbacks, but the entire team has been, really, really good at. I mentioned Will Kelly as an example when he wasn't playing in that. And he's, tearing up the starting team in training, and he's, carving guys up and making gaps and making things happen. And I think that's what's really special, not just about the scrum half group, although it is, those guys came in every day and worked and battled and, brought their skill set to the table. And I think that anybody could have been selected in any one game and gone in and done just as well. But it is a very unique situation. And obviously everybody wants to play and wants to start. And I think we had 4 really strong ones. And, Jason Higgins coming in next year, he's been playing rugby, obviously, probably since he was 5 years old. So he's going to be another guy who's going to have that knowledge of the game who comes in and can really play. So, yeah, I don't think it gets any easier for me, unfortunately, or any of our scrum half group. But, that's a good thing for our coaches and a good thing for the Arrows and a good thing for Canadian rugby.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of one of those things where it's like it's a nice problem to have when you're like, we can put we have 3 scrum halves that can start like anywhere in the league and put them in and be happy. So like with that, it's obviously like you guys there is a lot of new parts coming in. How do you have to go about integrating those guys like Higgins or Gonzalez, Montero, any of the new guys coming in? How do you like go about sort of like integrating them into the Toronto Arrows system? And what do you think is like the best way to kind of go about doing that?
I think the Arrows culture is unique in the fact that it's a real inclusive culture. There aren't cliques so much. There's no, like, I think everybody's kind of cool with everybody. And a lot of it comes from our training sessions are quite often, we'll have a morning gym, say 2-hour session, and then we'll have a lunch and we're all in the same room. We're all hanging out. Everybody's together all the time. And so that kind of gives you that, there isn't really an opportunity to be exclusive in that kind of environment and that kind of culture. So bringing in new guys has never been an issue for us. Obviously, there's the Spanish contingent on our team, which makes it easier for, guys like Gaston Cortez to come in and guys who just, it's a lot easier, obviously, for those guys to speak in their native language to one another and everything. And it also helps with things like the instruction from the coaches, translating that over and rewording things so that everybody understands. And it ensures that there's no gaps in communication with all the guys and everything. Sometimes you'll make jokes where it doesn't come across the same in Spanish and one of the other boys will explain, what he's talking about, and then you'll see him laugh and things like that. So yeah, I don't think there's ever been an issue. And I will say that you don't have to make that conscious effort to necessarily really try to include someone, because it's such an inclusive culture that just by nature of it, everybody seems to come in and enjoy it. I haven't had any individual yet come in who hasn't, really fit in right away and really enjoyed their time. So I guess that's I'm really thankful for that. But at the same time, it's a product of the environment. So I think everybody plays a part in that, and it's not just one kind of person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like with having like such a tight knit group on your team, obviously, with the way the schedule worked out last year and the way it was kind of going to work out this year too, you guys are obviously on the road together a lot. I'm assuming that kind of helps bring the group together, make it a little bit tighter. But like from those road trips, do you have like any like favorite memory from just kind of hanging out on the road with your teammates?
Yeah, I'd like to tell you that we lived like this crazy, extravagant life when we're all over, but some of the time, most often, you obviously have your roommate in that. And if you're there just for, the one game, obviously it's about preparation for that game. So after the game, obviously you can go have a night out and there's always, stories and everybody has a good time then, and that's where a lot of that camaraderie comes from as well. I think it's super important to have that social aspect within any team, not just a rugby team, any sport team, anything in general, that when you can kind of get outside of your work and that and really kind of enjoy each other's company, that's where a lot of that camaraderie comes from. But I think favorite memories, I don't know if I can say just one. And you always have, different roommates in that. I did really enjoy, like I was mentioning, that van trip that I did with Sammy and Giuseppe, and that was a blast. And that was coming from a road trip. So we were in Atlanta. We went Atlanta to Denver, and then we rented a van right after Denver. And for the bye week, we spent it driving around and then coming back and that. So that was awesome. Obviously, all the different roommates I've had a great time with all of them. The one unique experience was when we went to Vegas for preseason. That was a little bit looser in terms of schedule, and that, we didn't have to. We could go and explore Vegas if we wanted to during the nights off and things like that, as long as we kept it within reason. And boys all went and we did Top Golf one night and all that. So like just doing things like that, I really enjoy, and getting out of the hotel, because it can be, pretty monotonous if you're in the hotel and you're just sitting there watching TV, go to bed, wake up, you eat, you get ready for the game, play, and then go home, So those experiences, they're all kind of unique. I don't know if there's one in particular, but I really do enjoy, spending time with the guys on the road.
Yeah, Vegas probably isn't a bad city to have a few extra
No.
hours to hang out with the boys, huh?
Yeah, not for your wallet, but the rest of it's pretty good.
So we've been told that there are at least, and currently only 2 teams joining MLR in 2021. Just for hypothetical sake, if you were to start your own franchise in MLR, where would you put your team? Or to be more accurate, if you could go to any city in North America for a game, where would you like to go?
Geez, that's I mean, I think everyone was pretty stoked when Hawaii was, being thrown around the mix there. And I've had some great times in San Diego as well, in California. So, those 2 teams, I know that obviously they exist already. Hawaii not being in next year, but they're at least in the works. But those are 2 of my favorite cities to go to. Obviously, my fiance is from Chicago, so I think she would kill me if I didn't mention Chicago being a great city. And it is an absolutely awesome city to be in, and I would love the experience to go there. I don't know if there's any that I could really speak to. Unfortunately, a lot of my travel comes from playing rugby, but not necessarily.
You've only been to the places that already have the rugby team in it.
Yeah, exactly. If we could expand out, like Bermuda, I've been to Bermuda a bunch of years ago to play in this game. Actually, we played against the Saracens. They were on like an end of year piss up and still smashed us by 60 points. But it was like I played for this international 15 team, and Bermuda is a time. And I'm sure you guys have seen that like TENS tournament that's coming up and being played there. I don't know like who I have to pay to get on a team there, but that would be unbelievable. That would be a
see
great
if you
time.
can enter a team. Get the Toronto Arrows 10s going.
Yeah, I know it's been thrown around. Guys have been talking about it and that. So I don't know. Hopefully we can just beg Whitaker so eventually he's just, gives in. But I don't know. He's pretty stuck. So I don't know. We'll see.
Do it, Mark. Do it.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm sure he will listen to everything I say. So if there we
are.
Yeah,
Perfect.
exactly. Please do it.
You heard it here first, Whitaker.
Yeah. So one of the things, I guess, kind of start to close out here. You did mention, your fiance being from Chicago. Obviously, she's Megan Bozak. She's played for Team USA hockey. Has a couple Olympic medals, a bunch of world championship golds to her name as well. Does having like a partner that's also a professional athlete kind of even like help you like sort of like drive yourself and like help with that sort of like ambition, especially as you said, like during COVID, you guys were able to like buy a bunch of weights and stuff and keep like working out and everything. So like how do you feel like that kind of works for you guys?
Yeah, I think it's definitely an advantage, because nothing makes you feel worse than you sitting on a couch and her going to like work out and do all this and that. So like those sort of things, definitely it helps you out, and also it creates a competitive environment. that probably most partners wouldn't have, but, we're working out and are doing something and, you correct her form and she snaps back at you. You're like, uh-oh. It creates a, competitive environment where you wouldn't have that otherwise, which is good. Or, they're doing extra reps of something or whatever it is. And it just pushes you to do more and I guess be as competitive as you are. Everybody who plays a sport wants to be the best at it and wants to compete and not be beat by anyone, no matter what sport and anything. So it does drive some pretty good competition. It also allows for, one thing that I really enjoy is we can go and do something else outside of both of our sports and go and do that and really enjoy it. Like we've been golfing a ton this year. She's going to play in Russia and like the women's version of the KHL. So she's on her way there at the moment and that. So, but this summer we did do a lot of golfing and that's something that I really enjoy. And I know she has a great time, and it's, again, we can be competitive, but we can both suck. So it's, perfect. So
is that saying that you're both not very good golfers, or is there's something else that it's just
we
doesn't work out too well?
We try really hard, and we go quite often and waste a lot of money, but we golf, but yeah, we're not great.
Well, I mean, if it makes you feel better, I'm sure I don't know if you've seen the clip, but Danny Lee 6-putted from 4 feet out at the PGA tournament this weekend. I don't know if you saw that clip or not. But
I'd still be on the front 9 playing at Winged Foot. That course is so hard.
Absolutely.
So when it comes to personal development, obviously, the 6 months off haven't been a fantastic benefit for anyone, let alone yourself. But for next season, or even for your rugby career, do you have any personal goals that you want to accomplish, whether it's reaching a certain amount with points scored, or getting to a certain number of national team caps, or something different?
Yeah, I think as kind of it's both an individual and a team level. The obvious answer is obviously to win that MLR Shield with the Arrows. I think for me it means so much because I'm also from here and I've seen the Ontario, like how rugby's gone in Ontario. And when I started playing with the Blues, I played with, legends in my mind, and they are, legends who didn't have the opportunity to play professional rugby, the Derek Daypucks and, the Steve Piatiks, the Dan Wests, those guys I got to play with. I had a scrum half group one time. It was like Adam Schouten, who plays in Brantford, and Jamie McKenzie and Rory Tomlinson. And these guys who were just, when I was coming through, I thought they were the be all end all, and obviously Jamie's playing with us, but they didn't have that opportunity to play professional rugby. So if we could win a championship with the MLR and the MLR, I think for me that would be, so huge and such a representative thing of I'd be very, very proud of, to, see rugby come from that amateur time when guys weren't able to make money to, hey guys, like, yeah, I got the opportunity to play with you guys and this is what it's led to. It's not just a me thing. Like they've created, we're benefiting from the grafting that they put in at that amateur level. And for me, that would be, kind of bringing that all full circle. So winning that MLR championship for me would mean a ton. As far as obviously international stuff, it's always an honor to wear the jersey, and that's not just a cliche. It's something different when you put it on and you're like, I'm representing our country, which is obviously you live here because you think it's the greatest place to live and you're so proud of it and it's something that you take honor in. And when I was younger, when I got my first cap, I thought, I want to get 50 caps and that's it. And then you get a bit older and, the opportunities aren't always there. And you see this young talent coming through and you start to think, okay, well, I'm probably not going to get to that. And that's fine, because if Canada's winning, that's ultimately the goal, and that's going to grow rugby in that. So, if there's kids coming through who are going to go and take that I'm, more than happy to hand that over, but it's such an honor to wear it. And I would love the opportunity to wear that jersey and to play as many games as I can for Canada. If that happens, amazing. And if it doesn't, I just hope that, whoever does get that opportunity, relishes it, and we continue to grow the sport here, because the success of the national team is, kind of that leeway, that catalyst for the growth of Canadian rugby. Everybody wants to be part of a successful team and sport and that, and it's not always fun when you're losing games and that. So I think more than anything, I want to obviously play for Canada, but I want us to succeed as well.
Yeah, and like, where do you see, like, with the introduction of the Toronto Arrows, Pacific Pride is now out west, and like guys like Phil Mack just announced to be part of the coaching staff out there as well. Like, where do you see, like, with MLR coming in, with now professional rugby is now available in Canada, like, where do you see, like, the growth of rugby within Canada going in, say, the next 5 to 10 years?
I think that the opportunities that are there are different than they once were. Like I mentioned, those guys who I had the pleasure to play the Blues with, they never had that opportunity. They never had these guys would be working all day just so that they could get off to leave work early and go to rugby and jeopardize probably their jobs, and couldn't start their careers outside of sport after because they were playing amateur rugby, so the fact that there are opportunities now to make a living, to play professional sport, to keep that dream alive. There's so many guys who have had to obviously stop playing because they had to go and make money and that. And now there's that option where they don't have to stop playing, right? They can come play in the Arrows and make a salary for the season and put themselves in a better position to try to make that national team. Because obviously anyone who's a Canadian player, that's their goal, to represent the country. And now that option's there. And I can say last week we had Siaki and Tyler Rowland fly back from the Pride to come and train, and frick, those boys are they're fit, they're strong, and clearly credit to Philly and Cuddles out there for doing what they're doing, because those guys came back and they're didn't miss a beat, and they hadn't been with the team, and I was thoroughly impressed by both of them. So it's there. The opportunities are there. The pathway is there. And we just need more of it, more rugby, more opportunity to succeed. And I think that will be bred from, national team success, obviously. Like I said, everybody wants to be a part of it when it's going well. So if we can keep being successful at that level, which obviously they're on the right path, it's just going to breed more success.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, more games at the high level kind of just makes everybody better. So Andrew, we really appreciate your time. I think that's all the questions that we really have, at least on the rugby front. I do feel like, just because we have brought up hockey a couple times throughout this episode already, who are you taking to win the Stanley Cup?
I would have said 100% Tampa. It's not even a question in that, but I was talking with Corey Hector, our development coach, yesterday, and he's like, I think Dallas is, the Blues of last year. They're just going to grind and suffocate the life out of everyone they play. And I thought about that, and that was a great point from him. So now I'm like torn between it. And
the Dallas got game 1 too. So, I mean, he could be onto something. So
I know. I can't believe Khudobin. Like, how good is that picture? Have you guys seen where he has like the big steins of beer and like a plate of chicken wings? That is an all-time picture. I would play for that guy 10 days out of 10.
That'll be a poster on like the dorm room walls.
That'll be a poster in my bedroom. That is like an all-time picture.
Yeah, you can put it like behind you. Next time we do a podcast, we'll make that the backdrop.
Khudobin just sitting there, pile of wings, half cut. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, well, I'm personally pulling for Tampa just because I want to see what it feels like to watch a blue and white team win a Stanley Cup for once in my lifetime. I figured you'd enjoy that joke as a Habs fan, but that's all good.
No, I feel your pain. It's all good. Yeah. It's all good. The Habs haven't won in a while either. So, but before you let me go, I just want to say thank you guys, obviously, for having me. And I think it's great that what you guys are doing. We need more supporters. We need more people who are putting rugby out there. And, this platform is how people consume their content now. And so I'm stoked to be a part of this podcast, and I'm stoked by what you guys are doing. And keep it up. You guys, the Brian Rays of the world, the people who are pumping out that information and, really putting us on the map. Thank you for that. And obviously I'm happy to help out at any time that I can. So thank you guys so much for having me, and enjoy that Patriots Seahawks game tonight.
Yeah, well, we appreciate the kind words, and if you haven't looked yet, Patriots are up. Actually, Seattle just tied it. We just got a touchdown. Seattle just scored a touchdown. It's 14-14 now.
Perfect.
14-14 with about 6 minutes left in the second quarter. So that's my my live update for people that are going to be listening to this podcast after this game's over anyways. So,
so
I don't
Seahawks
really know
won.
Yeah, exactly. We can act like it. Yeah, talk about it right now. Did you see that play in the third quarter from Russell Wilson? Wow, it was unbelievable. So either way, Andrew, again, man, we appreciate your time, and hopefully we can, as you said, do this sometime soon.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good night.
Thanks very much, Andrew.
Yeah, take care.
Big thank you to Andrew Ferguson, scrum half of the Toronto Arrows, 10 caps with Team Canada, for joining us this week on the Rouge Rugby podcast. Stu, what did some of your takeaways from that interview and what Mr. Ferguson had to say?
Well, coming from the UK, there's obviously the great tradition of rugby. And even though rugby has only been professional since like 95, there's always been like the background, like the amateurism of like the early 90s of players getting paid, under the table, hush hush. So when he brought up the fact that in his environment, playing professional in his home country wasn't a viable option, it's a complete change from my experience of rugby growing up, because we're roughly the same age. I think there's only like 2 years difference between us. So it's been interesting to, especially hearing about his experience with the Crusaders, and then with the Ontario Blues, and now with the Toronto Arrows, and now being able to play in a professional environment. I think, so that was a really interesting takeaway for me personally. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously having professional rugby in Canada, pretty much for the first time, is massive for the sport. My biggest takeaway is that Sam Malcolm apparently was playing on easy mode the entire time he was in Major League Rugby, because I guess he doesn't need the full width of the post there. So, like, wow, like that story, that's a legendary tale, man. I'm surprised. I kind of like that when he told me that. I'm like, one, I can totally picture him doing it. Like, I'm not like, but two, wow, that's nuts. But also it's like he did kind of make it sound like the Arrows do like a competition for who's going to kick. So I feel like Sam Malcolm just won that all the time, maybe. And obviously if he goes 5 for 5 hitting it off the middle of the pole, that is just damn impressive. So I think we'll just kind of end it here. A little bit of fun, just because I kind of sent out a tweet a couple of days ago that got a couple fun responses to it. So I just wanted to have us weigh in on it, following that interview with Andrew Ferguson here. So in saying that, basically I sent out a tweet essentially just asking which fictional character would make the best rugby player. And it got a decent amount of responses here. So some people going with, obviously guys that have superpowers or some form of magical ability, kind of ranked pretty highly here. So we got, just kind of scrolling through quickly, we got Thor, Iron Man, Bane, Waldo, Hagrid, Black Adam, Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, Spider-Man. I can't remember which one is Rocky or Bullwinkle between the squirrel and the moose, but the squirrel got a nod as well. Ivan Drago, the Incredibles, the Hulk, Juggernaut, Hodor. Plenty of people kind of chiming in what position they would play. So Stu, just figured why not throw that out there, man. Which fictional character are you taking? You're putting together the Toronto Arrows next year. You get to reinforce it with a fictional character. Any powers, who are you taking?
Well, now that you mentioned Rocky and Bullwinkle, I think that would be a great scrum half, fly half combination to put in place. My fictional character that I would add to the Toronto Arrows, and I know the back line is already getting pretty stacked at the moment, but I would put on the wing the Duke to be of Caladan, which would be Paul Atreides. And, anyone who's read the Dune novels, and spoiler for the 2020 film, but in my defense, the book's been out for over 50 years and is available.
There's also a
at any
movie
library.
in the 80s.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's the David Lynch movie from the 80s.
So
You also can't spoil a movie that hasn't come out yet. You're fine.
So I say that okay. Now Paul isn't so much like a superhero in the sense of wears the underwear outside his trousers and has a cape, but he does have certain abilities. He has the weirding way, which allows him to move very quickly in short distances. I feel that any tackler would be adding missed tackles to their stats anytime they go up against Paul. He'll also have prescience, so he'll be able to see the best running line to take. And if he does get tackled, that's because he knew that was the best way going forward. And as being raised as the son of the Duke of Caladan and soon to be like Emperor of the known universe, very charismatic, great leadership qualities that are obviously needed for any team, especially. I'm not entirely sure if he'd be allowed to ride a worm on the field, but I think we have to go over the MLR handbook to find the finite details on that.
Yeah, Jonathan Kaplan's working on that right now. I don't think there's a rule that explicitly says you can't ride a sandworm during the game. What did you think of the trailer that dropped like a week ago? You a fan, or did you see it?
Well, my friends and family know that I last year got back into like the Dune books. I've read all of the main series with the exception of Chapter House Dune. So I always feel it's the same thing of like when I saw like the trailers for Harry Potter. It's like when you love a book so much and then you see, it's getting adapted into film, certain things are going to make it and then certain things aren't. So I've decided to just view it as its own entire like property in the universe. And certainly there will be, I already know they've made a few changes. For example, in the book, Liet Kynes is a man, and in the film, he's a woman. Well, she's a woman. So that's going to be, but then again, that's like a minor change. I'm not entirely fussed about that. I think Timothée Chalamet is probably going to do the most accurate version of the young Duke, because in the books he's meant to be 15. Timothée Chalamet is not 15, but he's got that young face. But I think the thing that stands out the most is the design of the worm that was right at the end of the trailer. I thought that was a completely unique take on it, while at the same time honoring like the previous films and the previous miniseries that came out in 2000. So if cinemas are still open by Christmas or whenever the film gets released, I would love to see it in full 3D IMAX, whatever gimmick they're having on it. But enough about my Dune obsession. What's the fictional character that you'd like to see playing rugby?
Yeah, well, my choice was Bullseye, the famed Daredevil villain, basically because it's not technically a superpower. Marvel doesn't classify it as a superpower, but his whole thing is that he can't miss. And I'm like, that is a clutch skill if you are a goal kicker in a league. So I was like, yeah, if you had Bullseye on it, man, you can just have him slotting drop goals from anywhere on the field at any point in time. As long as you get within like 60 meters of the post, you could just be like 3 points, 3 points, 3 points. So I said that. And, but, now that I'm, but I guess looking back at that Andrew Ferguson interview now, apparently Sam Malcolm was Bullseye, which, I think is furthering my case for having him play. So yeah, I would want a guy that can't miss any kick at all, or every pass is going to be on target. Throw him at 10. That would be kind of the way I would go with it. And you couldn't go wrong with that, man. That'd be the strategy. You see like guys like Elliot Daly pumping out 60-meter goals or whatever. He could do that at will. Like just wouldn't even be a question. It's just if he lines up a kick, it's through. 3 points are incredibly valuable. 2 points after conversions, incredibly valuable. So I like, yeah. So But, sadly, I guess Bullseye is off to Japan now. So we no longer actually get to see him on the Toronto Arrows, but that was going to be my pick. Curious, though, who anybody else would say. So if you have anything to weigh in, any further suggestions on the best fictional character that would be the best rugby player, feel free to let us know. You can find us across social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all at Rouge Rugby. You can find myself personally, same places, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all at Brissette the Jet. Stu, where can the fine people find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, and my handles are the same for both. It's Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN.
Perfect. And once again, big thank you to scrum half Andrew Ferguson for joining us on this week of the podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and we will look forward to seeing you guys again next week.